The moment, I think they even go live before that. But the moment I press this, it goes live. So I'm gonna do. Hola community! Welcome to Blender Today live streaming from the Blender Animation Studio, Blender headquarters. And today I have a guest. I have the co-creator of Cycles X.
Hello.
Creator of the motion tracker.
Hi. That was years ago, man.
That was here. That was 10 years. Actually, 10 years ago was Tears of Steel. So Sergey Sharivin, ladies and gentlemen, how a round of applause, please. So today, for the live stream today, I had two. I always pick like what is the big thing for this release for this week, and for this show. And today I had two topics. One of them was the geometry nodes preview, which is huge because we never had it, and even Cycles doesn't have a preview mode. It has Node Wrangler with a hack in the emission, and maybe we have here a person to ask about that.
I mean, it's as good as it gets, I guess. I mean, you have it basically for free.
That's the problem with add-ons. If they make something work in the way that it's maybe not ideal, then it's like, but it's working. Anyway, the second thing is related to Cycles.
Yeah.
You may have known the news. So that was the second the topic that I wanted to show for this week. So I think we can start with this, and shall we say it? It's I heard it's a bigger deal than I expected. It's path guiding in Cycles. What can you say about what is path guiding? Why paths need to be guided on a path tracer?
I mean, it's like on a user level, right? It's like basically the way to make the noisy images less noisy. So, or in artistic terms, like make images more beautiful, so to speak.
Quicker.
Quicker. Well, I mean, yeah, quicker, or even make it possible to be more pleasing, because some of the effects cannot be resolved by Cycles at all on certain lighting conditions. So that's where the path guiding comes in place. And basically it's a path tracer, right? So it finds a path from the camera or the eye throughout the scene to the light source, and say, okay, so this is, the luminance of that surface point for at that sample. And there are all sorts of trickery which comes in the path guiding to make it converge to pleasing image in a certain amount of time. And basically it all comes down to the idea that, hey, we need to know where the lights are. So if you say, hey, it's a diffuse surface, well, you have equal probability of scattering in any direction. But if you only have one light, it doesn't make sense to go in opposite direction. You'll hit nothing there. So and then there are some algorithms to improve this behavior in, like, in more conventional, like, strictly defined form, which will work for all the scenes to a certain extent. But nothing can beat algorithm which will kind of analyze your specific scene and say, hey, I know that if you hit this surface in this point, you probably want to go that direction because that is like where all your lights are. Yeah. And please don't go like opposite direction, because there is nothing can be hit there from like within the current scene setup. And like typical example of this is in doors architectural rendering, where you might have curtains or the door semi-open and a strong environment light coming to the room. And yeah, so in these cases it works kind of like in the best case condition for the path guiding, which says, okay, so please look for the light in that direction.
That direction. So the fewer lights that you have, the better it's gonna work, because I would say, the fewer light sources that you have, the better it's gonna work.
I don't think there is such direct correlation to it. It can know, okay, so there are many lights, but it will know, hey, this part of the scene only works with these lights, and other part of the scene works with other sets of lights.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think there is direct correlation with the amount of lights. It's more like how complicated your paths are.
This was implemented in Cycles. It's a new library by Intel, right?
Yeah, it is new library created by Intel and Sebastian Halfitz, I believe pronunciation is.
Yeah.
He was working on the library as well as integration into Blender. And yeah,
Sebastian Herthoff. Yeah. Wow. And is Cycles the first one to integrate this library? The first renderer, you know?
As the first production, I think.
Oh.
Because like a lot of those algorithms being first tested on Mituba,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure like if it was the case for the path guy or for the OpenPGL library or not. So, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was. But it's like very nice render for researchers, but it's not that heavily used by artists. So I think we are the first production renderer.
Not bad, because it is kind of a reference for other render engines, right?
It is, yeah. It is a reference for everybody, and it's also was. I guess it was also very helpful for Intel to be able to integrate it in the production render and see, hey, what are the typical like struggles in the production renderer.
Yeah.
And how you can make it into library integrated into existing renderer.
Yeah.
Because there is a bit of a difference between implementing reference implementation of a render and render which is optimized to render those big complicated scenes.
It's amazing. So this is available right now. It's in master, and you can turn it on of course in Cycles, inside the sampling panel, right?
Yeah, it is an option in the sampling panel.
It's off by default.
Yes.
Because
I guess partially because of compatibility fear, so to speak. Basically, we don't want to break existing renders by new baked feature. Other part of the reason is a lack of GPU support for now.
Yeah.
It's I believe it's gonna come, and yeah, I don't think it will show.
Yeah, it doesn't show. It's good. I was checking it that they did it. Yeah.
And other thing is, if your scene doesn't have a complicated light setup, then it just wastes a compute power.
Does it? Would it use more memory, do you think?
I think it would use somewhat more memory on a CPU. On a production scene, I don't think it will be that much more measurable compared to all the textures you have. But I don't know like what's the exact memory footprint of the library.
Wow, and it works on surface and volumes.
Yeah, surface. It's currently limited to diffuse surfaces, I believe, and for volume, I think it's isotropic. I think
isotropic. Yeah, and I think they mentioned it in the release notes. Yeah. Here, I think it was
I think it's isotropic. It's called.
Yeah, for volumes with isotropic and anisotropic scattering.
Oh, that's interesting. Nice. That's very nice.
And what is the relationship between this and caustics? Because so many people.
Well, okay, that's a good one, because a lot of people get the scene with the caustic, enable path guiding.
Yeah.
And hope for the magic. Well, the reality is the algorithm, it will help or it can, more strictly, it can help in the cases with caustics.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the algorithm will always help with the scenes with caustics. For this specific problem, there is a better suitable algorithms, which is manifold next event estimation.
Yeah, which was added in 3.3, right? 3.2.
No, 3.2, I believe it was previous release. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was added before, and that algorithm is designed to help with caustics. So, because you can also think of the cases of scenes where you don't really have that much complicated light setup as far as, you know, path guiding is concerned, but the caustics are still not being resolved in a nice way. So in ideal world, you kind of want those two algorithms working together side by side, kind of like becoming like complementary part of each other, so to speak. So yeah, it probably will help in a lot of scenes, but it doesn't mean that, hey, I enable it and
It's not a magic bullet.
It's not a magic bullet for caustics now.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. So are you excited about this? Seeing more people contributing to cycles, not only with like making it work for specific hardware, but actual future features.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely very exciting contribution to cycles, and it. I mean, I'm not sure like if it directly affects contribution, but it definitely attracts more people using cycles. That's for sure. And then another interesting part you can think of is because there is this entire topic of bidirectional path tracers, which have, you know, they solve some parts of the some kinds of the scenes, but it's again not very magic bullet, and it's so much different architecturally to implement bidirectional path tracing. So with the path guiding kind of closing the gap between bidirectional and unidirectional, you wouldn't like fully support what, you know, the scenes for bidirectionals are shining, but you can get quite close to. And I think for like the artists, I think that's a huge thing. Like it opens the doors to, you know, creating more interesting scenes.
More interesting scenes. That's
yeah,
good to hear. Right. Okay. Well, while you're here, I have to continue with the live stream. There is a few other things in cycles, not much. I just wanted to. It's a PSA about the driver number that now has a minimum driver for Intel, which is 101.340.
Yeah.
1340. That's one because it fixes a crash, I think, in the interface.
Yeah, there are a number of things which needs to be addressed, well, needed to be addressed on a cycle side, or sorry, on a driver side. So
this has been improved, and it's even 3.3 LTS. It's gonna be in the 3.3.1, and then Metal got some like 2-3% improvement on M1s. Would you call it an improvement? 3.3 or?
I mean, if it comes for free, sure, why not?
Yes.
I mean, whatever. I mean, on a production environment, like any percent helps.
Any percent helps, especially when there are many small ones. Is there anything in the like while you're here that it's coming up? Either are you continue working on cycles, or you're moving into VFX?
I'm moving to VFX. Like I was actually starting last week to work on some of the smaller things from the workshop which we did with Sebastian, just, you know, get my hands into the code again.
Yeah.
So was working on some scene orientation with constraints and stuff like that. But for cycles we have a new person.
Yes,
here.
actually, yeah. What it started today, right?
Yes.
Here at the studio, we have a new member in the studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, working where it's gonna work on hardwares like features or
more like algorithmical aspects, and the immediate, you know, like a way to get into the cycles was let's work together on working on the many light sampling and finish that project.
The Google Summer of Code.
Yes, finish the Google Summer of Code. There is still a number of things to be addressed there. So and I think that's quite good project to get into cycles code and understand how it all works without like being like, you know, given this big task, hey, implement this awesome big feature, and it's like, okay, so how does the cycles work again?
Yeah. Okay, so we can expect that maybe 3.5 I would say.
Yeah.
That is next year, March. So
I mean, yeah, but like those things that goes in, like it will be in a Git
yeah.
sooner, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Get sooner.
it's like nobody used the release anyway. Everybody used the build bot.
Everybody uses a billboard, which is sometimes an issue. But other than that, I think we're all looking forward to what you're gonna be working on.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that feels like very good to go back and like work on
Yeah.
some algorithmical improvements and like resolve outstanding to dos.
Yeah. Awesome. Do you wanna hang out for the rest of the show, or are you gonna, or you have things to code?
Well, I have things to code, and I don't know geometry nodes at all.
No.
No.
It's so cool though. It's so cool.
I know it's like you see like all those people doing beautiful art with it, and it's like, oh wow, that's very cool.
It's amazing. Today we have Sculpt news, we have grease pencil, some user interface, and we have plenty to cover. So, well, thank you so
Yes.
much. I'm not
Thank
trying
you.
to kick you out, but if you want to hang out, just
Oh, okay. Well, see you all guys and girls later. Bye.
Yes. All right. Thank you. All right. Hola, community again. How did you like to have a guest? I love having guests. So cool. That's the whole point of making it here from the studio. Otherwise, I would stream it from home. So okay, let me know if everything is okay. We're gonna go back to our regular program, which is seeing what's new in Blender today regarding the topic of this show today, which is let me switch into viewport preview for geometry nodes. Yes, the Control-Shift-Click thing that you can only do in shaders when you... Oh, I should have asked him about that. Yeah. Well, actually, he kind of replied. The preview mode, Control-Shift-Click on a shader, with Node Wrangler on, it shows you the preview. Well, that concept is now implemented natively. No weird add-on needed. Just pure Blender. So okay, let's see it in action while we're here. Let's do a more interactive show today. I hope I don't get over the time, but let's see it in action. So I have this beautiful viewport here. I have a cube, and let's say I want to add let's subdivide this cube a bunch of times, right? So let's see, I have this geometry. I want to add a noise to it. So you would add a noise texture, and then if you want to see the results of this, you have to plug it into like the position, for example, like set position of a node, right? Like a set position, and then you will connect the geometry here, and then put it here, and then put it as an offset, and then or move it, split it into separate the axis of each one, but that's too much. You know what? You can now simply Control-Shift-Click in any node. First, you have to connect the geometry, but then now we have a preview of the factor of the noise texture here as a value. Control-Shift-Click again, and then it goes into the next output, which is color. So you actually see the color of this texture and what is it doing. And that applies to anything, to factors, to numbers, to, I don't know, let's see another texture. Which one? Checker texture. No, let's use the gradient. There you go. You want to see the gradient. You can now without weird trickery. And of course, this is previewing the same geometry, but let's say I have another geometry. Let's add some primitive icosphere. I love the icosphere. Okay, so let's say I have here, this is the icosphere previewing a different geometry with a texture, with a gradient. Cool, that's nice. If you have multiple viewers, there can only be one active viewer. So if you click in another viewer, it's gonna go away, it's gonna disappear. So that's why there is an indicator up here that says viewer. It's the name of the viewer that you have there active. Let's say, does it say something else? No, it doesn't take the label. It would be nice if it would show the label, right? So you know which one you have active, connect there. But yeah, if you select the viewer, you can also choose which domain to show. So if you have a value that it's different in the face domain, that is in the vertex or in edges or curves instance, whatever, it will work. That is awesome. Then another thing, if you have, let's say you have multiple viewports, right? So you have one viewport where you have when you are working, and then another one with a camera view. And then maybe here you always want to see the actual end result of my mesh, which is, it should still be a cube because the group input is connected to the output. So what I see here is only the viewer. You can toggle, because actually the preview is two things. What you see here, one is a preview of the geometry, so the evaluated mesh, the final result. But also there is an overlay on top of it. If I disable the overlays, the shading goes away. I don't see it anymore. I can toggle the opacity of this by clicking on the popover of the overlays and then changing how opaque this is going to be. So let's see it with some color. Let's change the scale a bit. There you go. So you see the color, and then you can change the opacity or disable the overlay altogether. But again, what happens if I want to see here the final, like the actual render? You can also toggle that, and it is in the view menu of each viewport. This is per viewport, and then click on viewer node. If you disable this, which is on by default, by the way, so you don't see weird things, you can see that this is the actual result. This is not viewer, this is the actual output. So there was a long discussion about this, how to go about it. Like, does it need, do we need like a new button here in the top level, or maybe is it a new type? Is it like you know, an object wireframe and then viewer? No, because it is per object. That's another thing. If you have, for example, here I have, let's toggle, let's not toggle it. So in here, in the top viewport, I have the preview of the overlay and the geometry. What happens if I select another object? Because I just said that we can only have one viewer node per mesh at one time. So if I select the cube and enable the viewer node, I see it, I can work on it. If I select another object, it goes away. Why? This is on purpose. This is by design, because the discussions in the community about how to go about it and with the team, it can be very easy for the user to get confused, to see something in the scene, in the viewport, but turns out that that's not when you press render, that it looks different, because the viewer was a bit confusing. That can be confusing because you see one stage of the geometry that is not the final one. In order to prevent that, there is now this like safety measures that you can only have one viewer at a time. If you select multiple viewers, they toggle between them, and if you click away, shift click anywhere in the empty space, it's gonna disconnect it or make it inactive. So that's a quick way to make it work. So you toggle between the viewers, shift click anywhere, and then it's gonna be disabled. All right, next. How is the chat, by the way? I think I did a longer explanation than usual, but sometimes it's nice to take the time and explain things. The next feature, it's there's a whole bunch of new nodes. There are so many nodes. There's like 9 new nodes this week. They're all related to the same thing, basically. They are ways to access the topology of meshes and curves. So you're gonna find a new menu even in here, that it's in the, when I say here, I was actually turning off the curtains from going down automatically and changing the lighting of the place. But yeah, Shift A, you're gonna see there is curve topology submenu, and mesh topology. And here's where you see all the bunch of new nodes that are available. Corners on face, corners of a vertex, edges of a corner, edges of a vertex, face of a corner, offset corner in face, vertex of a corner, and then in curve topology you also have control point neighbors. Well, let's see them here. This is the commit by Hans, and there is another one by Guitar Geek, if I remember correctly. Yes, by Johnny Matthews. And all the nodes, you can see everything that is new. You don't have to click on multiple commits. You can just go to the wiki page, release nodes, 3.4 alpha, nodes and physics. And in here, simply go to the ones in bold. When something is in bold, that is a tip, a pro tip. The developers mark in bold the nodes that are new. So it's easy when we make the final release nodes to say how many nodes are new and so on and so forth. So this is everything that is new for 3.4. This is crazy. So these are the new mesh topology information that I just mentioned. And in the curves, that is the points of curve, control points, neighbors, curve of point. These are really building blocks. Remember last week I mentioned that now we have nodes, node groups as assets. So having this very fine control in nodes means that developers, artists, anybody that wants to contribute with more advanced node groups that could come built inside Blender by default, and the end user only sees it as like something that is understandable, like an easy to understand node. But then actually, if you go inside, there is like maybe 30 nodes, building blocks that make up this one more complex one. That is it with the geometry nodes. I think I cover most of it. Oops, sorry if I made the microphone go nuts. But you know what is nuts? You know? Okay, let's get ready for this. Get ready for this. Tan-tan-tan-tan. There are updates, and for this I'm gonna need the Mario pipe sound that we don't often share. Like we don't get to talk about it too often. But when was the last time we talked about Sculpt features, Sculpt mode features? Well, that counter needs to be reset because this week there was 2 additions around the same topic in Sculpt mode, which make the auto masking feature complete, I would say. Like Julian Casper from the Sculpt Paint team mentioned that this kind of was one of the last remaining additions to the auto masking feature in order to take the time to make it more discoverable, give it its own place in the UI. That still hasn't happened, but give it its own place in the UI, clean up the way the menus work. Right now you're gonna notice that the UI is not the best, but the feature is the best. There's 3 new features auto masking. 1, cavity auto masking mode. Yep. And for this, I mean, the demo is using a monkey, so I can also do a monkey. I have the tech to make monkeys, so let's add a monkey. Control 2 to subdivide it, and then Control A, apply visual geometry to mesh, which applies modifiers and some more, I think. Okay, so I have this monkey. I'm gonna go into Sculpt mode, and the options for the auto masking, they are in 2 places. One is per brush, and one is the more general options setting here. So this menu with the options, you're gonna already see the cavity inverted, and some of the new features. Let's open the sidebar and access the same place basically, but from the options. Where is the option? In tool, and then options here. There you go. So it's easier to see. Let's see. So masking. The easiest way to see it is with color. So if you're painting, for example, and you want to paint some red, but only in the cavities of this monkey, you can just turn on cavity and then simply start painting. And this will automatically make a mask as you paint over the areas that are considered a cavity. So like, you know, this shape basically, like the dirty vertex colors, but now in real time. You can also do inverted, so you can toggle and then you get the other way, the other kind of cavity. This right now it's weird. It's a toggle. It's a checkbox that disables another checkbox. This is not great UI. We are aware of that, but this feature had to go in before the deadline of last week's Beacon 2 because of the stage. You watch the show, you know what I'm talking about. There are deadlines to add big features, and then there is a whole month of polishing the UI and everything until the beta. So this is where we are right now. The UI is not great. We're aware. Actually, what you see here is not even what you're gonna see when you download Blender from the build because I changed this locally. But yeah, the cavity has a few options. So factor basically is how strong it's gonna be, and then blur. So this blur, it's a bit weird because it goes all the way to 25. This can be slow, so careful. Basically, it applies some blurring as you are painting. So you paint a mask and then blurs it out. And then you can also have a custom curve to change how the factor, how the mask will apply. So it's pretty convenient to have something like that. You have curves everywhere. And how is this going to look? Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. But you get the idea. Masking is super important. It's like super basic for certain tasks. Cavity inverted is the same, but inverted. And then there is the two new features that are related to auto masking. One is let's start with the view normal. View normal, it's similar to the front faces only. And what it does is based on the view is going to mask out what is, you see, it didn't paint inside of the ear because it is masking out only what you see from the view. And you can turn on occlusion, and then if it's occlusion, wait, I think the UI here, I'm working on it. This is not even in master. It's the other way around. When occlusion is on, it means that you are only taking into account the meshes that are no, you're taking into account occlusion. So whatever is in front is not gonna mask it out like a stencil basically. And the settings here allow you to add a fall off when you're painting, so it's not too strong. You see, it's very smooth. If I move the fall off to 0 and then I paint, it is ugly and too strong. But yeah, this is amazing. The other feature is called area normal, which is similar to the view normal, but based on the normal of where you click. So for example, if I start painting on top of the head, this automatically makes a mask around the normal, and that's it. So for example, if I paint over here, then this is getting auto mask. So it's kind of, I'm painting, I can paint like snow, or not only painting, actually this works for anything. So if you're using a filter, for example, a filter for inflate, you can also inflate just in one area, like beautiful. But you apply a texture, for example, if you want to make the top a bit more rugged, you can like a noisy texture and then only paint in that area, which is Awesome. So all these auto masking features like the cavity and the cavity inverted, you can access from the Pi menu, which is in Alt A. Alt A brings up the auto masking Pi menu. By the way, it's not that everything that I'm showing today is thanks to Julian Kasper, who today came to show me. And then he mentioned that a lot of people don't really know the Alt A auto masking Pi menu, and it's so handy because it allows you to quickly toggle crashing Blender but to quickly toggle the masking or the cavity inverted or all the other ones. So yeah, super nice that is being added, and this feature has been in the to-do list for a while. Before this feature, there has been a huge refactor by Joe Eager, and that shouldn't go unnoticed as well because it's pretty huge. Like the amount of work that sometimes something that feels small as a feature, it takes a whole refactor to be done. So props to Joe and to the team, to the whole Sculpt texture paint team for pulling this off. Now it's time to work on the user interface, so it's pretty and presentable. Okay, next. The other section, well, today I don't have many more. Let's talk about Grease Pencil. There is a new modifier in town that is the outline modifier, which is basically the same as the operator for outline and the option for the brushes for outline. Now it's in its final form as a modifier, so you have plenty of options to choose from in order to use the outline option. Here the user Frog Stomp made a video that told me to share, where it's a bit sped up, but at the beginning it's just drawing some strokes, adding some lines, coloring the lines, and then finally what you see here is the outline. It's a new modifier that lets you basically change. Wait, I think the video shows everything except the outline modifier. Actually, yes, it doesn't even show. Okay, the outline modifier, but it's very very simple compared to if you're already familiar with the other options in the operator, you're gonna be familiar with it. Outline modifier, change the thickness. You can change the material if you want to give it another material. Then you have an option to keep the shape, to subdivide it, to sample the length, and even use another object as a target to define the beginning. So pretty neat. Another feature that was added for Grease Pencil, line art, Grease Pencil in general, it's can be used for pretty much anything. Time offset modifier has a new mode called chain. This allows you to chain in 4 modes: forwards, backwards, ping pong, and reverse ping pong. It also comes with an additional repeat parameter, which specifies a number of times a particular segment should run. This is closely aligned with a community request from the Grease Pencil cycle modifier. Oh yeah, so it's a time offset that you can use to animate, like actually animate and give chain. So one after, yeah, you can basically animate using modifiers. That's kind of crazy. You give it an action and then after that another, you chain them. So cool. All right. Next, the next change. Let's see, what is the prototype option? Oh, this is how developers code. With a prototype in JavaScript. Fun. Next improvement is on the fill tool. Remember the fill tool? We've been talking about it for the last 2 or 3 weeks about Grease Pencil. And this week there is a newer algorithm that checks if the extend crosses like a standard stroke and not just only the extended strokes. there's an option to disable it because it can be heavy on your computing it on the CPU. There is a toggle. You can press the D key to toggle the stroke cross option or not. And that is it. There is here a little demo that shows how when the extension reaches a point, it stops at the intersection with real strokes. Cool. All right. Let's talk about the user interface. There is a few UI changes. Okay, this one is in 3.3, or no, actually will be in 3.3.1, which I heard it might come out this Wednesday. In 2 days, the first fixed release of 3.3 should be out. I want to say will be out, but let's say will be out. Let's be optimistic. And it includes plenty of fixes, lots of bug fixes, and one new feature. Well, maybe, no, one new feature. Why? Because in 3.3, support for Windows Precision touchpad on laptops was added, which makes it behave like it's been behaving on macOS for ages. Pinch to zoom, all the typical like 2-finger, 3-finger gestures that was common in macOS for so many years, and on Windows in some laptops as well. Windows introduced support for those, but it wasn't optional. It was forced basically, and not everybody likes to have pinch to zoom, or it's just sometimes not as convenient, and also it's not great for accessibility. So that has been added as an option. Now you can toggle in each key map. You can disable or not the touchpad multi-touch gestures. It's on Windows and on macOS even. So for macOS users who have that behavior but want to use the old school way of zooming, you can now. There is a toggle for it. Then the other change, well, this is not user interface. Let's talk about potpourri section. There is a bit of everything. You can now drag and drop blend files, backup blend files. So blend 1, blend 2, blend 3, any backup blend file basically. Blender so far only had support for blend files, or like .blend, or for images and a few other modes, but not for blend 1, blend 2, blend 3. Now you can drag and drop. Another thing the Blender can do this week that couldn't before is actually an addition to an existing tool. You can now batch rename action clips. There is no image, no description, but it should be easy to demo, because if you have an action, let's say I have an action here, and let's go to the dope sheets actionator. Okay, so this action is called cube action. What if I'm a bit crazy and I just want to batch rename all my actions to instead of being, okay, let's not do the object, let's do the action clips, and let's do, oh, nice. Here it knows that there is one action. Objects, it knows there is one object. Collections, it says 0 collection, but it's actually 1 collection here. Blender, you're drunk. Huh, or maybe, selected. What if I select it? Sorry, I'm doing testing here. Yeah, okay, it's a bit confused. Action clips though, it knows that it should rename all the actions in this case. The process works as usual. So if I want to replace cube and I want to rename it to sphere or cubo, because I'm translating to Spanish, and okay, and I can rename all the actions in one go. Action clips. Why are they called clips though? It's not a clip, right? these are just called actions in Blender, action clips. Next, the next improvement is related to editing. This is a bug fix, but it's a big one for people using characters in fonts that have, well, fonts with characters that are not the usual length. Some characters are longer than others. Some use like multiple columns and whatnot, or symbols. And the king of font work lately, Harley, has been working on improving this. So now you can actually go through these. There's another image here. Yeah, through this, varying with keys, and it will work. Okay, time to talk about an add-on. The Pi menu, View 3D Pi menus add-on now has an option to open recent, or what is it? I just look at the code, it's much easier. It's open or open recent. It used to be only open, now you can also open recent from the Pi menu in the space view and 3D. I think this is only an add-on, because if I understand correctly, I don't even want to turn on the add-on, because if it has a sub-menu inside of a Pi menu, it's not legally accepted. Now, I mean, it's not a big deal, but we have a convention inside of Blender that Pi menus should be one operation, quick gestures, more than open and then have to think about what else to open, because then it loses all the speed, right? But this is an add-on, so it's okay. And the last improvement on it is actually a bug fix that applies to 3.3 as well. If you have had issues with the export UV layout add-on and you notice that it was exporting your layouts a bit blurry, it's not you, it's Blender. It was Blender, because since Friday this has been fixed by Germano, so it will be part of Blender 3.3.1 fixed release coming out this Wednesday. And that is it. I think I got everything covered. So let's see if there's any questions in the website today, Geometry Notes Preview. Yes, there is one here, and there is 17 questions. So okay, I'm already telling you I'm not gonna manage to answer all of them, but I'm gonna go through the ones that have more votes, even though those votes seem to be from the authors themselves, some of them. Let's start from the top. Hello, by the way, Max Edge. Hello. How are you? Did you have a good weekend? Did you blend anything fun? Will the new hair system have interpolation at some point? Interpolation? What do you mean? It's curves. You can... Oh, like children object. Yeah, like child objects. Yeah, absolutely. Like the idea is that it features parity. Feature parity. But yes. Soros then says, hey Pablo, are there any plans to add an attribute blur node? As someone who used Houdini and Substance Designer in the past, being able to blur geometry node attributes and shader node textures is incredibly useful. I have no knowledge of a blur node being in the works, other than the... No, because for shaders you can use the noise, right? But blurring attributes gives it a texture. Yeah, no, I'm not sure actually, so can't say. If there's any developer in the room, maybe Hans is over there. But yeah, no. Okay, people are starting to vote for themselves, which makes it illegal. So let's go down to the people that asked first. Try to be fair. So Sank says, hola Pablo, thank you for your great live streams. Thank you for watching. I know it's now Beacon 2, but for 3.4, I hope these quality of life patches can see the light of day. Scroll sidebar category tabs. This was my Monday morning. Yeah, bit sad moment because I got a notification of someone mentioned here something about it, asking about it, about if they can patch 3.3 to have this. No, there's no way you can. You need to compile Blender if you want any feature. In Blender, it's not like you can just add a file to your install and make something work. Blender, you're gonna see that most of Blender fits in one Blender.exe file. But yeah, the the patch can fit in 3. In Beacon 2, though that's this is a bug fix. This can be part of 3. Of Beacon 2. So let's hope that I need to get in touch with Guillermo, see what's new. You know, the thing was going so well, like yeah, it's work. Yeah, okay, fix that, and then things happened and confusion happened, and you know, sometimes the patches get stuck because of confusion. So the hope is high. I want to keep pushing for it because I really want to see it, regardless if we have tested it or not in a specific platform. That comes like with the testing. That's why we have testing. That's why we have daily builds. And also that's why things are added so early in a release. Beacon 2 would be ideal, and then Beacon 1 would be ideal, and then Beacon 2 is still acceptable to add things that we know work on 90% of the system, which is Linux, Windows. Linux, that's wishful thinking. Linux is like 5%, Mac is 5%, Windows is. So if things work on things like UI fixes work on Windows, then also it's UI, of course it's gonna work everywhere. I ranted too much. Directional box selection, this is a new feature. I don't know what's the whole thing up on this. Was it the introduction? It even has the old panel drawing. This is before 3.0. This is to February 2021. So it's been a long while. I don't know what's waiting. Actually, the last comment is by Harley in June, and Harley is really good at updating his patches. So maybe there's something else. But you're gonna see if you look at Harley is like pretty much every now and then there's like a whole round of updating their patches to master. So hopefully this gets updated to master, because it would be pretty nice. And also it's a setting. It's a user setting. So not auto offset, box selection behavior. Here. No selection behavior. It's a setting. I think it should definitely be here. Congrats on having more than 3K. Yes, I forgot to mention that, but last week Blender Development Fund reached, I didn't want to jinx it though, because it was 3007 last week. At some point it went up, at some point it went to 3004, and now it's 3006 individual members of the Blender Development Fund. So it is a big milestone. Blender 2.90, some 92, 91, and we were in 2,900. So it's been really stale. We had more corporate members, but I mean, corporate is fine, but you know, it's so much money that comes in from corporate that if one goes down, one company stops supporting, then it means there's a big chunk of money stops being, you know, available. So if we could ever one day grow this number and not depend so much on corporate and have more individuals, that would be amazing. Okay, next is Silas. Hello, Pablo. How much? Okay, let's do 5 more questions because I'm already near the end. How much time should I plan for the studio tour on Sunday after the conference? I will be at the conference this year for the first time, so see you there. How much time? Well, I mean, as long as you want, really. It's the place is gonna be open. I don't know exactly what time. Was it like noon? I don't remember when is it gonna be open? But usually the I wanted to see. Oh, okay. I wanted to see if I had any any spoiler alerts of the things I've been working on recently. I've been working on a pretty cool project in Blender. It's a new website, and there will be more news soon. But yeah, I didn't want to spoil the news because it's super fun. All right. Sunday is a traditional visit the Blender HQ. It starts at 12 o'clock. So from 12 onwards, you can just drop by anytime and also hang out as long as you want. Of course, there's going to be a lot of people. So if you don't feel comfy surrounded by that many people, you could do a visit of the studio in like 10 minutes. Really, it's a small studio. Existing exciting future with the animation workshop, realistic short film, texture painting upgrades, and more geometry nodes. Can't wait to test physics nodes. Isn't it? Really, it's an exciting time to be alive. The Sculpt module is getting attention. The texture module is getting attention. The geometry nodes, it's doing great. Once hair is done, it's just a matter of it. The next step is simulation nodes, and added to hair, it will be just so cool. Bonus question is what is your number one tip for lighting in Blender? The scene you have to light is a low poly nature scene. Number one tip for lighting in Blender? Well, it depends, as in, well, like working with your lighting or light a scene. The number one tip that by the way, I did Sketchfab announce the winners of the, anyway, the Sketchfab, Blender artists and Sketchfab organized a contest, and I was part of a jury, and we already picked a winner, but I don't know if it has been announced already. But that reminded me of this, like there were many great works, and some of them would have been even much better if they had better, a bit more work on the lighting. And one thing I missed always in most of them was having shadows, broken shadows, no shadows, like have more of the outdoors, have even indoors, you can always break the shadow, not have straight lights in the characters. And then in terms of setting up your lighting, the best way is to, well, at least what works for me is when I get overwhelmed with the lighting, turn off all the lights and start one by one enabling them and see what is the purpose, what is my purpose of each light, and see if they make sense, and then remove. Remember, less lights, faster rendering. Yay. Hello Sergey, what's the plan for the VFX module? Making it awesome. Make the VFX module great again, because in 2012, when it was the motion tracking, everything was added to Blender, that was the peak. It had some more additions, but then it's gonna come back. Have a nice day, and now I need to book the hotel and the train. Yep, book the hotel, because during Blender conference, before the Blender conference, there is an event called Amsterdam Dance Event, which brings a ton of people to Amsterdam, which means hotels are scarce. Okay, hello Pablo, says Ander Kling. I hope you're having a great day. I am actually. I'm even gonna open the curtains because it's a beautiful day. Rainy. Is there any news regarding the VR XR project? No, unfortunately not. Would love to use Blender for sculpting in VR, not just scene inspection. The hype for VR is growing again with the new Pico headsets and the upcoming Oculus event. Would love to hear some news from the Blender side. Well, I know that there are improvements in USD, which is related to the whole VR or sharing Blender in other platforms for VR. Blender support internally. The only thing that I know is that Daniel Pepeland, Daniel Martinez Lara from the Grease Pencil team, it's working with a developer in Spain about, you remember the Blender Grease Pencil VR XR? It had a name. Project. Well, it might see the light, or at least some light soon. And there is a presentation in the conference website inside the schedule. And then if you look for Grease Pencil, you see, where is Daniel? Here, 10 years of Grease Pencil on Thursday at 2:30 in the theater. It's a presentation by Daniel Martinez Lara, who is going to show the new, what is it, VR, Geometry Nodes, Grease Pencil 3.0. And I heard that it's mainly related to VR, and there is something in the works. So we'll see. Because if it works for Grease Pencil, it works for anything else, right? Okay, so that was 1, 2, 3. Okay, 4, 5. Hi there, Freemind says, some weeks ago I asked you why light groups are done in this outdated way instead of by marking collections as light groups, which would be consistent with everything else in Blender that has anything to do with groups. Your answer was that not all lights are objects. This makes sense, but the only other thing that causes light but it is in an object is the environment. Why not just add a drop-down menu for environments in which the user could select what is a light group, marked collection the environments belong to. I think that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, it does now that if you think about it, but when it was implemented, maybe the developers didn't think about it. You know, hindsight, it's always 2020. It's yeah. Sometimes it's more clear to see it once things are done and what could have been done better. And I hope this could be changed at some point. But if you have objects can belong to collections, lights can belong to collections. But I wonder how flexible is that with shading though. But yeah, light groups, if they're only going to be used for that, then maybe it makes sense. I don't know. Cheesecake says, cheesecake. Hello, Pablo. Are there plans for shading overhaul? Hey, what? We just had Cycle 6. EV Next coming up next. What is the shading overhaul? Okay. At least, is there any update in the works? Are we going to get some new shading nodes like blur node, float fill, new texture generators, edge detect, or warp node? Just something to bring it closer to the Substance Designer level. I know that many of them are technically possible to recreate in Blender, but sadly it requires lots of maths and the brains some of us don't have. That partially, some of that could be fixed because Blender support now node groups as assets. So if we get a smart brain to make those node groups and then ship Blender with those node groups, maybe we don't need to implement some of those features as a dedicated node. However, it would be nice, but the shading overhaul thing, okay, so to answer your questions, is there any update on the works? Yes and no. Yes, because there is work being done in layered materials, like layered texture. So you can make a texture that is built of many layers, and you can assign a map to a specific pass, for example, like the diffuse pass and paint on the alpha pass and the glossy and all of that. That some of the features Blender can do already, but it's not great. So a new interface for that, it is in the works. But shading overhaul, I think it's a bit of a stretch because it's not so much the Blender needs new nodes to have a shading overhaul. It's not like it needs those new nodes. It needs a whole texturing overhaul. No, let's not overflow. Overhaul. I think the shading side of Blender is not as bad as the texturing / shading side of Blender. I don't know. I hope I explained myself. Okay, I think I'm gonna wrap it up because I'm already past the time, and then people complain because the show is too long and they don't have time. I forgot to start the show by saying that everything that I saw today is in the description where you can click on it. And also that the show, it's only, the new features is only a section. Then it's more about Q&A and hanging out, which I think it's cool to be able to do that. The studio is blooming. Today we had three new people, a new cycles developer that is working on the other side of the building. Is with the rest of the developers. Then we also have two filmmakers that are going to be around. They're hired by the Blender Animation Studio mainly to record and share more of what we do here, but also it's going to include some of the people that actually work here. And yeah, a bit of a behind the scenes, because we have this whole place here where only people that happen to drop by Amsterdam see it by the studio. So we are going to be sharing a bit more of that soon. And then maybe one day we make a documentary. Imagine, wouldn't that be great? It's a bit late now, or not. Maybe Blender will explode one day. But for the time being, let's call it a day. And let's I'm not sure about the live stream next week. I might not do it because Beacon 2 is already here, so the news are not going to be as much, and we really have to start preparing for the Blender conference. So I think I might skip the next one, and not before telling you to submit your entry to the Susanna Awards Film Festival. If you haven't, please do. 3 categories as usual: animation, design, and short film. Anything that was made with Blender in the last couple of years, because there hasn't been a festival in a while. So please submit it so we have a great animation festival. Even if it's commercial work, if it's a storytelling, if it's just an animation test that happened to look really cool, well, there is a section for that. There is a design section and animation section. So anything works, anything goes. Other than that, I think it's time to wrap it up. Thank you for tuning in. I'm sorry for the people that I didn't get to answer your questions. Please, the week after, try to answer it, trying to ask again, and I will try my best to answer. Shall we? We shall. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Watch your ear holes, because I hope it wasn't too loud. Thanks everyone. I have a great week. I hope you liked this episode, and thanks Sergey somewhere in here, because it really makes a difference when there is a guest. I hope we get to see more guests, and we don't get COVID. That would be fantastic. Other than that, happy blending. Have a great week. See you next time, in 2 weeks time, for another episode of Blender Today Live. Ciao.